I was just talking about the most over-reported stories of the week about the coaches leaving and about Saban's demise as a coach. And I was ending that conversation by simply saying this. Not everybody is a fit everywhere. And sometimes coaches think they can fit somewhere and they don't. And so they come to Alabama. They think they can put up with it. They think their families can put up with it. And sometimes the individual can, the coach can, but the family can't. And I know because of my family and the way I interact with my kids and engage in their sporting events and engage in their life and my wife's life, that I would not be able to coach at Alabama as a point of employment. But I love Coach Saban. I think he's the greatest coach ever. And I think his process works. And I'm glad that he's able to find people that would do that. And we'll talk about that with DC. We got Pat Holding as well. DC, welcome into the Blitz. How you doing this morning?
Doing great, Martin. How are you today?
Doing good. Did you kind of catch some of that conversation about working for Coach Saban and the assistants and all of that?
Oh, yeah, I caught that, and I agree with you. I think it's an overblown story in the media. I think, especially the Eno story and the Josh Gattis story, we haven't heard Saban's side of that, but I can put myself in his position and look at his perspective and kind of feel like probably what he was doing. I mean, I've said on your show the biggest loss Alabama's had is Josh Gattis. I think that he was really, really trying his best to keep him. And when Josh Gattis was talking about getting chewed out, it wasn't a chew out of how bad you are. It was chewing out of what big mistake you're making.
Right.
Here. And why would you want to go there when you can stay here and compete for national championship and all that sort of thing. So I don't think it was butt chewing by Nick Saban is nothing new. If you were to ask Josh Gattis and Dan Enos, did they get their butt chewed during the year? I would say the answer would probably be yes.
I would say so.
And so I don't think that's a new thing. I think that was just a choice of words that he used, and it was not derogatory. I think it was just the old idea that everybody gets butt chewed by Nick Saban, and I had to face it leaving as well. And so it just showed you how passionate Nick Saban was about Josh Gattis and how good a coach he is. Dan Enos, I think he's left Alabama for other reasons. I think he's a great coach. I'm sure Nick Saban wanted him, but I've always had those. We've all had those situations, Martin, where you believe you've communicated clearly to the other person, but the other person's heard a completely different thing.
That's right.
And so I can see there was some communication between Enos and Coach Saban, and Enos saying something to the effect, I've got a greater opportunity, and Coach Saban said, well, I've got some things on the works here, and Coach Saban not hearing what Enos was saying, and then the next day Enos is gone, and Coach Saban looking for him. I can see all that happening, and still it not being his way. It's been blown out of proportion. So, I agree with you. I think it's been blown out of proportion by the media.
Well, he's done a great job rebuilding his staff, and Pat wants to talk to us about the Saban assistants. Pat, you're in with DC. What's on your mind?
Hey. Good morning, DC. DC, have you ever worked on a regular job, a job where you work 8 or 10 hours a day?
Yeah, I work more than 8 hours a day now.
Okay.
I'm laughing because you're supposed to say no, DC, because your job is not 8 to 10 hours.
All right. Hey, but here's what I'm talking about. When you work 8 or 10 hour a day job, after 2.5, 4 hours there, you expect a break. And then at lunchtime, you expect a break. Well, my point is that Coach Saban gave these coaches a break when he hired them. That is the only break they got. When you go to work for Coach Saban, it's a different world. He is driven, and that is a word that these millennials do not understand, the word drive. They do not understand the word initiative. They do not understand the word hustle.
Who's going to the Super Bowl? Who's going to the Super Bowl? Who's going to the Super Bowl? Yeah.
The Patriots.
And who?
And
who?
With a coach that is driven.
But he's a millennial, so it's not all millennials. I understand what you're saying, though, Pat. It's not all millennials. I want the millennials to keep listening to my show. We don't all.
I
Go ahead, Pat. I'm just messing. I'm messing with you, Pat. I'm messing with you.
I'm just saying they've got problems in that they don't understand the real world of hustle. that in order to build something and to make something of themselves, it's not I go to work at 7:00 in the morning and at 9:30 I'm going to get a break. That's not the real world. When you work for yourself, basically the way that a coach does, he's building his resume because one day he wants to be paid $7.5 million a year. And if you want to be in that world, you have to pay your dues. And to be able to go to Alabama and learn the process from the best coach in college football, that is a break that most people will not be afforded.
What and DC, I'll let you come in on this, but I'll say this, Pat. I agree with you on some of the sentiment about the millennials, but I put that on us as the adults because it was our parents who taught us hard work and why you do it, and then we turned around and tried to give our kids everything so they didn't have to learn it. You didn't learn it just because you were special. Nick Saban is who he is because of his dad. And so all the millennials you're referring to that didn't learn that principle, you need to turn around and look in the mirror at all of us adults that taught it. I'm just saying.
Hey, it's with a drunk. Hey, with a drunk, most people that have drunks in their family are enablers. Yep. They enable them to be drunks.
Yep. And so we enabled the millennial generation. What you got, DC?
Hey,
well, I understand what you're saying, Pat, but here's my take on that is this. All the coaches that come and work for Coach Saban are getting the biggest break in the world. I agree with you. But all the coaches that come and work for Nick Saban have a perception of what it's like to work for him. But when they get here, sometimes the reality is much greater than that perception. So some people think some people get here.
You're absolutely right, DC. But like I said, one more thing, and I'll let you go, is that these families have to understand, if they want the big bucks one day, they've got to pay the price. And
but paying the price doesn't mean working for Nick Saban. The coaches at Mississippi State. I'm going to tell you, guys, I love Coach Nick Saban, but Nick Saban isn't the only route to success in college football. Dabo Swinney has proven that you can do it another way. There's other coaches do you know how much the lowest paid coaches in the SEC are making $2 million a year, 2.5, 3 at Vanderbilt. So there's big paychecks out there without it.
But those are head coaches. Those are not. We're paying our strength and conditioning coach nearly $1 million a year. Think about that. If it wasn't for Nick Saban, they wouldn't be getting this kind of money. It's like John McEnroe for tennis. Nick Saban is John McEnroe for football.
I agree that he's done it, but you don't have to work for him, though. I think we like I said, I disagree with all of the mindset that Nick Saban is the only path to the golden goose. He is definitely a path that if you look at it and you do it, you can get there. But not everybody in this game is in this game just for $5 million a year or $6 million a year or $4 million. Some of them are in it for the kids. Some of it in it to take care of their family and enjoy their families. And some of them don't see both of those marrying out, and they choose family over money and process. And so, all right, Pat, I got to go. I appreciate you.
Hey, tell DC I've already ordered my tickets for the Beauvoir with New Orleans.
I'm sure you have.
Y'all have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, DC, we got to get the break. But, DC, we want to come back and have that conversation. I think we kind of get blinders on with the Crimson Tide and can't see the other side and think that anybody that leaves here is leaving here because they couldn't cut it. Some of them don't want to cut it. And we'll talk about that more right here on the Blitz. You're back in with the Blitz, Martin Houston, James Hardy, and we got DC on the phone lines with us, and we're talking about Coach Nick Saban. And sometimes I told you, James, you bring up a topic, you really don't expect it to get any legs. You just kind of point something out, and it kind of takes over the show. We've had a couple call in about the assistant coaches working for Nick Saban. We're talking about that with DC. You can find DC's podcast at DC Capstone Report, presented by freelancepictures.com and RollTideBama.com. Robert Saucier said, I'd be fine with working with Coach for 12 hours a day. My kids already know what I look like. First of all, I don't think 12 hours is the limit. And number two, mine is not about what my kids look like. It's about me being an influence in my kids' life and being able to attend their sporting events, their functions, etc. It's just a choice and a preference. It's not. It's what you base on. Guys who have, C.J. Watson says, guys who have stuck around or come back seem to have some pretty big opportunities come up, and that's true. But there's 130 Division I schools. Nick Saban has a grand total of 8 to 10 coaches out there that were directly a part of him. So there's plenty of opportunity and plenty of ways to get head coaches jobs other than just working for Nick Saban. DC, I hope I'm making sense on what I'm trying to say, but let's talk about Nick Saban and what he's doing with this coaching staff. Nick Saban has gone out and appears to me to be putting together potentially his best coaching staff. What are just your initial thoughts on the group he's putting together?
I agree, Martin. I think I said last week on your show that Coach Saban look for this year to be probably his best coaching job ever. I think he coaches much better coming off of a loss than he does coming off of a victory. This is going to motivate him. But what I'm seeing, and I spoke yesterday with a friend of mine. We spoke a little bit. He listens to your show. I'll just call his name is Shelby. He listens to your show, and we talked about this. He had a great take on it. He thought that Coach Saban was putting together the best coaching staff that he's had since he's been there. And when we got to analyze it and look at it, I think he's correct, and I think you're correct. And I believe what I see here is, I believe Coach Saban last year, coming off of what he thought he needed to do to with recruiting and everything, I think he overcorrected a little bit in his philosophy of coach and hire.
Yep.
And I think he's seeing that. And, what we're seeing now this year is a correction of that trajectory in his coaching. I think he's coming back now to a little more older, stable, still good recruiters, but people that works within his process, in his system. And I think people that he's gotten already will do that. And I think there's some great hires here. I mean, you can talk all you want to, like you have this morning, your callers, about those who've left. But man, let's talk about those who's getting to come in. This could be the best coaching staff that he's put together since he's been here. And I'm excited about that. I mean, look at what he's getting. He's getting people who are really good at what they do, but he's getting people from other SEC schools who have really good ties to the recruiting class that he's already recruited. And so, I mean, you're seeing that not only is he coaching for the talent of put a team on the field and affecting the players, but he's also hiring coaches that's going to keep this 2019 recruiting class, which could be the best recruiting class he's ever had, intact through National Signing Day. So I give him kudos for that.
Yeah, and you look at not only is he, as you said, he's getting the experience in the sense of Sal Sunseri at linebacker coach, we assume, 35-plus years. Steve Sarkisian, former head coach. Charles Kelly, former DC. Kyle Floyd, former head coach. And Charles Huff from Mississippi State, but also via Penn State, and what he's done and his experience as the run game coordinator. And then if it looks like Bush Jones is going to be another one of those on the field coaches, and then of course there's still the rumors of Bo Davis coming back, and so it's crazy the experience. But also, if you look, he's covering himself with the recruiting relationships based on where he's pulling these coaches from as well.
Yeah, I saw a story. Tennessee kind of went over the limit there when they hired T. Martin, and they were trying to try to get down to 10 coaches. I don't think Jerry Pruitt had in mind losing the ones he lost. That was his best recruiter by far, and a great on-the-field presence there at the defensive side of the ball, Charles Kelly. So I think that Coach Pruitt though is knows the process, knows everything that he's taken with him, and I think coming in and coaching at Alabama defensively, Kelly brings a big edge on the field coaching. And of course, you got to remember, we still got Pete Golden and Carl Scott still on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
You mold them in with the ones that we've already got, and then then the question becomes, though, if we get Bo Davis, is there a spot for him right now? I'm not sure. We may still see another move on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
Rumors have it that we might, with Sal Sinceri coming in, you might see, another move, another defensive coach going out if Bo Davis were to come. So there's still some chances we'll even hire another coach and make a difference. With Butch Jones moves to an on-the-field position, you got an offensive analyst position that might be filled by another head coach. DJ Durkin has been around the program, and that might still. So I still think Coach Saban is building potentially one of the best staffs he's ever had.
Yeah, and he lost one of his defensive analysts for 2 years in a row. He's lost one of his lead defensive analysts. I forget the young man that left. He was already a prior DC and head coach that left. That's already left the staff, and so I definitely think he's going to bring in at least one or two more off the field, gurus, juggernauts to help with the analysis. And I think that's what was missed last year a lot with Tosh Lapoy, in the sense that Wes Neighbors Jr. was the lead defensive analyst for Saban for a couple of years, and then he was out of here, went down to coach with Kiffin. So I've heard that he may be back, and I don't know if that'll be on the field or as that lead analyst again or not. With that said, DC, what do you see from an offensive philosophy standpoint with the Sarkisian, Huff, Flood, and if it's Butch Jones or Lance Taylor is one of the names I've heard, and I also saw someone bring up the wide receiver coach from West Virginia as a possibility. What do you see that offensive philosophy being?
Well, I think he's building an offensive philosophy around what staff we have. I think we got great, as far as football players, we got great wideouts. I think we'll still throw the ball. I think Sarkisian has a good pass game coordinator. I think bringing Huff in, great run game coordinator. I just think the philosophy is going to be to run the ball to set up the pass and have more openings on the play action pass instead of the run pass option. I think getting away a little bit from the run pass option will allow our offensive line. I think Kyle Flood has coached the offensive line to more of a run block first and then pass block, protection pass block, like you would an NFL style. So I think maybe go back to a little more run the ball to set up the pass. I don't think he's going to go away from the passing because I think we got weapons there that he's going to utilize, so I just think it'll be accomplished a different route. The philosophy won't be so much as RPOs; it's more of a play action passes, I believe.
DC, do you believe that Tua will be better in that style of offense, or the same, or go down a little bit?
I think he has the potential to be better because I don't think Tua has ever been a run threat, and I think if you look at the great RPO quarterbacks out there, the running is a great threat, and it's what leaves so much of the passing options over. I think one thing Tua is great on is a quick release, and I think that as in times past, Alabama has exploited the slant a lot in the play action passes, and I really believe that you'll see that happen more and more. The slant won't go away. That's the big pass that we hit coming out of the RPOs, that slant. And I don't think you'll lose that in a pro action set. I still think that slant will be. You saw if you watched any of the game that Brady threw, the slant pass was a pass that he killed that final drive on because that still can be done out of a pro action set. I don't think you have to be an RPO to run the slant. I think he can really flourish in this type of offense.
I agree with you on that regarding Tua. I think he could absolutely be electric in a more balanced play action off of it. If his accuracy hasn't changed, I could only imagine if a guy is playing the run and then trying to get back on a pass against Tua and what he'll be able to do. I think I don't know that the numbers would necessarily be the same because you may have more runs than you would this year, but I think his explosion and his big play potential goes through the roof, and a little more Sarkisian type of package. Go ahead.
The deep pass could definitely be better out of the play action. I can see it with as accurate as he is and with as strong arm as he has. I think the deep ball would be open, have more explosive plays. Maybe not as many passes, but much more explosive plays than were in the RPO offense. I
agree. DC, so I got an extra point for you.
Okay.
Now Alabama wasn't very good with extra points this year. But we talked about Saban making improvements, et cetera. What is the one thing that Saban had to address this offseason that he may or may not have already addressed?
Well, I think, in my opinion, it's the big thing, it's the glaring thing, it's the elephant in the room that I've talked about several times on this show, and that is the lack of depth and the lack of bringing along an alpha dog in the middle to replace the little linebacker position that's vacated by Mack Wilson. And the depth behind Dylan Moses is little. I don't know that we've got a person coming in that's going to be able to start as a freshman. I don't know who we have on the roster right now that hasn't been developed in the offseason, didn't play last season. So I think that is his biggest challenge now that I don't think it's addressed yet. That'll have to be addressed in these off-season workouts coming up through spring and summer. So I think that's a big role. If you look in the past, we've always had that guy that comes in when Hightower, or McClain, or when you got C.J. Mosley, Reuben Foster, we got Rashawn Evans. We've always got somebody in the waiting who's going to be that one. And we just don't. I don't see that now. I don't see it's been developed. We don't show it on the field anyway. We hear people talking about all the 5-stars guys, but who can he develop to come on the field and be that person this year? I think that's a big weakness right now.
So DC telling you, watch for linebackers in the spring game. Scott Cochran, get busy. Okay. Hey, now red zone was one of our best parts of our offense, all except for the national championship game. And red zone is all about scoring points. What's the biggest score for Nick Saban this offseason?
Well, I think
so far,
the biggest score I think is bringing in the number one recruiting class again in 2019, and so far keeping it intact with all these off-season changes, and realizing he made an error in over-adjusting for recruiting instead of on the field teaching, and making that correction and getting some great hires. I think that's his biggest off-season win.
All right. Okay. I got to give you a little bit of basketball. Bama playing Ole Miss tonight. 3-point shot. What's the 3 things that Bama needs to do tonight if they're going to beat Ole Miss?
They need to control the ball with and keep the ball from turnovers. They need to be free from mistakes. They need to have a real good night shooting threes, and they need to make their free throws. I mean, those are 3 things you talk about: extra points and free throws. We talked about that in 2019, but extra points and free throws are big, and we haven't been doing very good either one of them.
Yeah, think about that. We have one of the best football programs in the world. Couldn't make the free points, called extra points, and we've struggled with free throws. Did you get that? Go ahead.
I think we had James mentioned me earlier, and I agree with him. We had to make our last 2 in the last game to bring us up to 31% from the free throw line. That is beyond me understanding. I promise you, my coaches that coached me in junior high and high school would roll over in their grades today to think that I would even consider that 31% was anywhere near where it needed to be. Free throws. That was something we did. We shot 100 free throws after every practice, and you had to make 70% of them, or you had to keep shooting.
Yeah, and so that's it's pretty amazing to think about when Alabama, after a bad, horrid start, took the number 1 team down to the wire. And here's the thing, and one of the things I think we have to, I'm gonna add my version of the 3-point is the free throws. Defense has to, for 40 minutes, not just a half, and then no turnovers is what I would say against Ole Miss. When you look at it, we killed them without scoring a field goal for 10 minutes, DC, and we didn't expand our lead.
Yeah. And when you play that great a defense and you can't capitalize at least 4 or 5 points on offense to extend your lead, that's demoralizing when you think about it. For the team, you did a great job of defense, but you can't capitalize on offense. And in that time, we had at least 7 free throws that we missed.
That's right.
If we'd hit half of them,
that's right.
We'd have a 3 or 4 point lead. So
right.
I think that makes a difference. And I know you say, well, missing free throws can't just lose the game. Yeah, I think it can. When you could have made 50% and still won the game, then I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Well, who you got tonight? Bama, Ole Miss.
Well, I think Ole Miss is coming in on top, and I think that they're really going to come in and give us an opportunity to win this game against Alabama at home. But in my heart and my gut, and this is not from a Bama fan, this is just feeling that Alabama has been on the cusp 2 great games on the road against Tennessee, and then and heartbreaker loss to Texas A&M. I think Alabama is going to win tonight. I think they're going to put a full game together. I think Alabama wins the game tonight, and it's big for us. It maybe launches us into where we're going to be. Alabama's got a good team. Alabama's got a good team, better team than last year, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. Just need an alpha dog.
They need an alpha dog. They need somebody to step up, and if Alabama can get that out of this team down the stretch, they're going to be dangerous even going into the tournament.
All right, that's DC Capstone Report. You can go to dccapstonereport.com and find out what he has coming up on that next podcast. DC, man, we got to do this more. We'll catch up with you next week, if not before.
Thanks, Martin. Have a great week and roll tide.